think your microphone is on mute.
So long and okay, I'm sorry. Let me repeat then. It's quite embarrassing. Anyway, no, thank you for reminding. So, what I was saying is that in the verse number 10, let me also then share the page to make it easier. Okay, how many seconds have gone? So, we have to sort of, yeah. Okay, so we were discussing the verse number 10 in the previous class, and there you're saying Krutva Rupantaram Jaivam Dehe Pravishad Ishvaraha. So Ishvara enters into all of us. So, how to make sense of samsara, where in an absolute sense we are no different from Brahman, yet we are trapped in samsara, and this whole process of creation doesn't mean that we are kind of defiled and denigrated to live at a level called jiva, called the human beings. So, like for example, in Christianity, you have this idea about Adam and Eve and the fall. Now, here the word fall is not real. The word used here is Rupantaram Jaivam Dehe Pravishad Ishvaraha. So, the creation that has happened in which that Ishvara Satta is entering into all of us. Swarupata is there. We are able to recognize it. Iti taha shruteha prahu, and the shrutis, shruti vakyas, jivatvam pranadharanat. Why are we referred to as jiva? Because jiva pranadharane, that is the etymological root of the dhatu. huh? Purva urdahutaha taha, that is tat shrutva tadeva anupravishat, Taittiriya Upanishad 2.6. Anena eva jivana atmana anupravisya nama rupe vyakaranavani. You see, that is the critical thing, that the human subjectivity, that is the crux of the matter. The divine thing, the subjectivity at the collective divine level happens with Maya Upadhi. Because if there is a subjectivity, there would be some object with which it relates. So the Ishvara subjectivity is created with Maya Upadhi. So it becomes Ishvara. But his subjectivity is completely different from our subjectivity. He has Nitya Jnana. He knows everything, past, present, future. At the same time, he knows about all of us. So his Jnana is different from our Jnana. Our subjectivity is kind of defined, it is limited, it is restricted, it is all the time related to a couple of objects on which it's reflecting. But Ishvara's subjectivity is all pervading, is essentially the key to his omniscience. He knows everything at the same time and is able to respond to all of us. Therefore, somebody praying in US and somebody praying in Africa and somebody not praying in India, he knows all of us at the same time. It's a very magical power that he has because of that Maya Shakti. But the critical thing here is that God has entered all of us, which means Swarupataha, the same Chaitanya Satta is there in all of us. However, it manifests as Jiva, Pranadharani. Ityadihah Shrutiyah Pranadharanat Prananang Swamitvat. Prananam Swamitvat. It's very important. There was this discussion in one of the Upanishads. There was a bit of a. The Indriyas can also be referred to as different pranas, and then the Mukhya prana becomes their boss. If he leaves the body, or the Indriyas, Indriya Devatas become useless and fruitless. Therefore, Prerakatva Jivatvam iti Prahu, and then Ishvara also is sort of motivating force. And I was just, when I was muted, I was just mentioning about it, that this Prerakatva, etc., that we attribute to Ishvara is always with Maya Upadhi. Because ultimate pure consciousness doesn't motivate anyone, doesn't dissuade anyone. The motivation and dissuasion that we experience is more of a reflection of our own sanskaras, our own aspirations. The key word that we can bring in to make sense of it To understand it more reliably is to use the word dialectical relationship. It's not Ishwar is doing everything. It's not that we are not responsible. There is some kind of a dialectical relationship, back and forth, happening same time. That's why it's so magical and so difficult to understand. Jiva dhatoho pranadharanam artham iti anyatra spastam. So that is jiva pranadharane. Rupandara sabdena jiva ishwarayor avhedo avidiyate. That is the key thing. Rupantara. He just changed the way he appears. In Vedanta, we have so many metaphors and examples given. One of them could be that a potter, just imagine how Jiva becomes an independent actor. A potter using clay makes a pot or makes a flower vase. And then into that shape, you put some soil, then you plant a beautiful flower sapling. And then in a few weeks' time, it becomes a small plant, flower plant. And then it has its own identity. You made it. Now it has its own identity. And that is how, uh, in some theologians, argue that God, having created us, doesn't interfere in our lives on an everyday basis. He has given us complete freedom to act, to do right, or fall prey to what is wrong. But He doesn't interfere, but He is the one who is motivating all of us. And how? Bhagavan says in Bhagavad Gita, according to our own sanskaras, according to our own efforts and our aspirations. Shastutvam pravesana kartatvam cha ekasya eva militva sarvaha svateyaha bodhayantiti. So therefore, these whole set of Upanishads, now we have already discussed a few shlokas, mantras from different Upanishads. One is that this whole creation doesn't happen because somebody is working hard with a hammer and tong or anything. Nothing of that sort. It's essentially sankalpatmaka. Number one, sankalpa, then krama srishti. Phase by phase it happens. And then when it happens phase by phase, there is agency. It doesn't happen on its own. It happens according to a plan. And then we have done a few shlokas to discuss this. Now that we know that Ishvara creates us and then enters into all of us, the natural question which will emerge in our minds is, how do you make sense of the jiva? Can you tell me a little more about it? You are saying that we are just another expression of the Supreme Divine? That sounds very interesting. That is very exciting. Instead of other religions, Semitic religions, for example, where you have a transcendental God sitting at the top who creates us, and then we are kind of compared to, he's the shepherd. We are like the herd of sheep. He's guiding us. So he's at the top. He nurtures us, he protects us. Here is different. We are also an expression of that divinity principle. If we are also an expression of that divinity principle, there are a bundle of questions which will emerge in our minds, and Vedanta must learn to resolve it. Number one, why do we not look all the same? Number two, if Ishvara has created us, but we are not called God, we are not Ishvara, then what is the difference between us and Ishvara? What defines us as Jiva? Right? Question number two. What is the question number three? Why are we, if we are actually an aspect of God and an expression of God, so miserable? Why that divinity doesn't flourish, doesn't express itself very powerfully? So these would be questions which would emerge in the minds of the students, and these questions are sought to be answered. We will be doing only 3 verses today. So verse number 11. Evam siddham Brahmeshwara Vilakshanam Jiva Swarupam Darshayati. Now we have already discussed what is Suddha Brahman. We have already discussed what is Ishvara. Ishvara is that Maya Upahita Chaitanya. Suddha Brahma is without any subject object dichotomy, no qualities, no activity, no change, nothing. It's that pure luminosity which is the absolute certain. Sachidananda Swarupa. Now, tell us the third element, which is the jiva, and how is it constituted. Why is it sloka so important? This sloka is very important because it's going to tell us about ourselves, who we are. Swarupatah, same Sudha Chaitanya. Vyavaharatah, we are different. In the phenomenal world, we are limited. We know a little. We have anxiety, we have hopes, we have cravings. So we need to understand how are we constituted. We have already done Panchakosha Viveka. We have already done Avastatraya Viveka. Now we are looking at it at a very ontological level. What is that reality called Jiva? We have done this earlier. Here we are looking at it in a philosophical way. Chanyam yadadhishtanam lingadehasya yah punaha chichaya lingadehasta tatsangho jiva uchyate. Chaitanyam, tat chaitanyam yad adhishtanam, which is Shuddha Brahman. Look at it, because God has entered all of us. So He creates us and He enters into us. So that Shuddha Chaitanya has to be within all of us. Now the question I had said, why are we not looking the same? Number two, why are we so miserable if we are all essentially God? Swarupata. Linga dehasya punah. Then he's talking about, I'll explain to you what is Jiva. So first, you are Chaitanya, at the same time, you are also Linga Deha, Shukshma Sarira. And we have already done it in Bhagavad Gita, and also I think part. And what is it? In Tattva, I think in Tattva Viveka, in the first chapter itself, we have done it. Now, Shukshma Sarira is what? You have Mana Buddhi, plus you have Pancha Jnanendriyas, Pancha Karmendriyas, and Pancha Prana. So, it's Shukshma Sarira is above the Annamaya Kosha. It's a mixture of Manomaya Kosha and Vijnanamaya Kosha. That is the Sukshma Sarira. Yeah? And that is the one when the body falls, we die in very literal sense. The Sukshma Sarira travels. That is what the Shastras say. Where does it travel? Yeah, they say they'll go to Brahma Loka or maybe Soma Loka, Aditya Loka, Chandra Loka. These are different layers of existence, different layers of reality, where this particular subtle body we have dwells there. Otherwise, how would you have Swarga Sukha? There has to be something, right? If you're talking about Sukha, there has to be some kind of Antakarana. But it's a very subtle one. It operates in a very encrypted, a very encrypted fashion. And how does it move? It moves with the Jivatma. And we are discussing what is it. So Linga Dehasya Yaha Punaha. So say Jiva is also Linga Deha. Then Shukshma Sarira. Yeah. Essentially, the body mind complex, body remove, then that mental complex. Chitchaya Linga Dehasta, Linga Dehastha Chitchaya or Chidabhasa. Chit Chaya, shadow of consciousness. Means pure consciousness. Pure consciousness is already mentioned. It's saying Chaitanyam Yadadhisthana. Then we have Chitchaya. Means what? It's a Pratibimba Vada. It's a reflection. So you have the sun, then you have also the reflection of the sun. Where? A small mirror. Sun is in the sky, and there is a boy who is using a small tiny mirror to reflect the sun rays on the face of his friend to disturb him. Mischief, part of life in schools. Similarly, you have that Chichaya is Chidabhasa that we have. Chidabhasa is a reflection of that pure consciousness. In Panchadasi, he will give us another example as we move forward. So you have the Mahakasha, the cosmic space. Then you have Meghakasha or Abhrakasha. You will explain all of these when we move forward. Same Akasha is kind of, pervading the clouds or getting reflected in the clouds. Then you have Ghatakasha. The Akasha space is also there in a pot. Then when you fill it with water, that same sky is reflected on the surface of that water body inside that pot. That is Jalakasha. Where is Akasha? The little boy looks at that pot full of water in which the moon and stars are getting reflected. He says, this is the Akasha. Real Akasha is Mahakasha. Similarly, we have Pratyak Chaitanya as we did in Vedanta Sara, but then you have Chidabhasa and you have this Ahang Prabriti originates there. I'm a body, I'm a man, all kinds of things. With this Chidabhasa, Chidvad Abhasate iti Chidabhasa, Chitchaya. Yeah. So that is the reflection of Chaitanya, Chitchaya. And where is it? Linga Dehastha. Now the sun cannot get reflected without a reflector. Glass or a tiny mirror you need. Similarly, the Sukshma Sarira is a condition because that is where this Chaitanya gets reflected. That becomes Chidabhasha. So there are three elements. Taken together, Tat Sangho, Tesham Sangha, Jiva iti uchyate. That is what is called Jiva. This is a philosophical nomenclature. It's kind of an ontic picture, so to say. The ontology of the self, he's saying. Of the self, what self? Jiva, Jivatma. What is the ontology? What is the reality of it? He says these three things. Why is he not taking the physical body? No, it's not relevant because when the body is perfectly there, the person isn't living. Body can be embalmed and kept, isn't it? You can protect the body, but that's not the Jivatma. Body is not the Jivatma. Therefore, the Annamaya Kosha is removed. The real Jivatma is these three elements. Yeah. So let's look at these and then we will look at the larger philosophical questions. Let's look at the commentary in the Kalyana Piyusha Vakya. I looked at the Ramakrishna Tika, more or less the same. Linga Deha Kalpanayam Yad Adhisanam Adharutam Chaitanyam Tatra Kalpito Yo Linga Deha. Linga Deha Kalpanayam. Now, it's the imagination of this Sukshma Sarira, the mind, Yad Adhishtanam Adharabhutam Chaitanya. Like you are seeing a snake in a rope. What is the Adhara or Adhishtan is the rope? What are we seeing? We are seeing the snake. What is the Chaitanya in all of us? Without name and form. It doesn't have male or female gender. It's not white or black. It's not 6 feet or 3 feet. It's pure consciousness. The subjective aspect of it, of our Sukshma Sarira. And that particular consciousness is now being captured in that subjectivity. And therefore it becomes a man and a woman. Yeah. Chaitanyam tatra kalpita yo linga deha. And this whole body, the absolute reality is only consciousness. Kalpita linga deha buddhi karmendriya prana pancha karmi manasa dhiya sanyutaha. So these 17 manaha, buddhi plus you have these pancha karmendriyas, pancha jnanendriyas, and pancha pranas. The vital layers together, 17. Linga dehasta chitchaya chidabhasaha tatsangaha. And then you have in this linga deha, sukshma sarira, you have this reflection of the pure consciousness, which we call chidabhasa. As we move forward, we would be doing more discussion on this word chidabhasa, which is very critical. Yeah. So chidabhasa tat sangaha. Sangha tesham. Tat he himself is explaining. Tat sangha means what? Tesham trayanam samuha jiva iti uchyate. Taken together, these three elements, we call it jiva. Anena suddha chita chidabhasa linga deha samudaya jiva iti phalitam. Therefore, you have Suddha Chaitanya, you have Chidabhasa, and you have Linga Deha or Sukshma Sarira. Linga Deha means what? That marker through which you identify the Jivatma, which is the Sukshma Sarira. Therefore, we call it Linga Deha. It's the chin of that Jivatma. So Suddha Chida Chidabhasa Linga Deha Samudaya Jiva Iti Phalitam. That is how briefly he sort of explains this. And we will, dwell a little more on this particular uh, question. Now, the critical thing here is that the previous sloka we did, Tat Shrutva Tadeva Anupravishyat Tad Anupravasya Satya Tyatcha Abhavat. That we have already discussed what is Sat and what is Tyat. Yeah. And after that, we said that in the immediate Chaitanyam Yad Adhishtanam Linga Dehascha Yaha Punaha Chichaya Linga Dehasta Tatsangho Jiva Jate, in this particular verse, so the pure consciousness is the Adhisthana, and the Linga Deha is the Sukshma Sharira. Chichaya is only, it's not Paramarthika. Chidabhasa is not Paramarthika. Even Linga Deha is not Paramarthika. These are Vyavaharika because they are hinting at duality. They are hinting at diversity. Your Chidabhasa can't be same as my Chidabhasa or someone else's Chidabhasa. Our Sukshma Sarira is also different. And that is how we have diversity in this world. The Chidabhasa essentially means like borrowed consciousness. It is the reflected. It's like they say moon, what did they say? The moon relishes the glory, reflected glory of the sun. Similarly, this Chidabhasa, all the greatness that it claims to have, is in fact derived from the Suddha Chaitanya. Now, here you have we have already discussed earlier what is the Srishti Prakriya, what was Avyakrita without name and form, and then with name and form it comes Vyakrita, means it becomes expressed, and that is what we call as the Sansara and the Jagat. Now, here Jiva is Chaitanya, Linga Deha and Shichaya. Yeah. And the Suddha Atma, the Brahman, Tadeva Shishtva Tad Anupravishat. How do we explain it? Now it's explained here in this verse. That Suddha Chaitanya is in all of us. Then it appears as Chidabhasha in the Sukshma Sarira. That is what is the meaning of God entering into all of us. Essentially, that means that that divine principle, that divine truth, that divine light is reflected in our Sukshma Sarira, in our mind, and it takes a different appearance. But remember, the source of it is essentially that Paramatma, that Ishvara. That is what is this Ishvara Pravesha, means Chaitanya getting reflected in Chidabhasa, in the Sukshma Sarira. That is how we define that this is the Jiva body. Yeah. Now, Bhasa, as I said, we need a little more discussion and we'll go on discussing. This is a very often used concept in Vedanta literature, and a lot of people get a little confused as to uh, how do I make sense of it. You remember in the Kathopanishad, for example, Tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam tasya bhasa sarvam idam vibhati. So, that is the original source of the light, which lights up everything. It's like the sun, which rises in the east in the morning, and then everybody sort of gains an appearance. Everybody's existence get verified with that light. Sun's existence is not verified by any light. It's self-evident. Swayam Prakasha. So if you look at how that happens in the Brahma Sutra, Bhagavan Bhashyakara, in the Adhyasa Bhashya, it's essentially superimposition. And he's saying, Yusmad Prachya Gocharayor, Vishaya Vishayinor, Tama Prakasavat, Viruddha Swabhavayoho, Itiritara Bhava, Anuvapatto Siddhayam, Itiritara Tad Dharmanam, Itiritara Asmin Adhyasa Uchyate. This is a very complex, the most powerful, pregnant philosophical statement to my mind has ever been made by any philosopher. This particular sentence, it can take us days and days to unravel what is the secret. The word which is used, what is central to all of it, is called adhyasa, a certain superimposition. As a result of which, X appears as Y. It doesn't mean that there is no parallel in Western philosophy. Yeah. Long after, you remember, this great philosopher called Karl Marx, he uses a word called false consciousness. He calls that there are inversions that take place. Yeah, German ideology, the famous book. So many people say it's a false consciousness. It's a Jean-Paul Sartre, for example, uses this word called bad faith in Sartre. In Nausea, a very famous book, uses the word bad faith. A faulty understanding of reality, as a result of which we are organizing our lives according to that faulty understanding. Adhyasa originally was the mother of all these philosophical, you know, exercises much later in different other contexts. I'm not saying everything started with Sankara. It's a very powerful word called adhyasa, itiretara adhyasa. So, you attribute the qualities of pure consciousness to the limited body mind complex and then superimpose what are the attributes of this body mind complex on Ishvara. It happens. And then he says that Yusmad and Asmad. Asmad is that pure consciousness. Yusmad is whatever is anatma. It's something to do with I-ness, aham. And then Yusmat, whatever you describe as you is anatma, non-I. Is not I here is not ego, it's anatma. That sense. And then he says that naisargigo, ayam loko vyavaharaha. So this is without any beginning. Naisargika. This has not been created by anyone because this Maya, Shakti, is without a beginning. Therefore, our ignorance also doesn't have a beginning. So you cannot say when we started the whole Christian idea of a fall, we don't have any such theory here. We don't have, because this is without a beginning. Can you discuss, for example, you saw a snake in a rope. When did the snake appear? How the rope became a snake is a philosophical question. Why so? Because the rope never became the snake. Now, but all of us started talking about the snake. Fine, you did talk about the snake, you wrote its history, you did a lot of things, but it never became the snake. So, Brahman never becomes Jagat, is essentially a superimposition. As a result, we're talking about this whole creation theory. This creation theory, as you have discussed already, is essentially to tell us that all of it is not fundamentally real. We have to look beyond, and we need to turn our consciousness inward to that Swarupa Chintana. And that is a critical thing. Yeah. And so far, this word Chichaya is concerned, this is not a word which all Vedantic scholars use. This is used mostly by Vivaranavadis. Vivaranas are the Pratibhimbavadis who talk about that there is absolute consciousness and it's getting reflected. It's like the sun getting reflected in 1,000 mirrors. That is the example which is given. So, and then these are independent units. And there is something called Avachedavada. What is Avachedavada? Like you have Akasha and Ghatakasha. That is the Bhamatikara Vachaspati Mishra. He's also a very prolific, great author. One of the encyclopedic wisdom he had. He has written books and commentaries on Yoga Sutras and Sankhya and on everything he has written. One of the greatest intellectuals to have been born there. So, what I'm saying is, one parallel of this word Shidabhasha, if you're looking for a parallel in Western philosophy, for example, you would look at the phenomenologists because they are not talking about ontology as a given. They are talking about how the mind processes what it calls real. So what is that subjective aspect of it? What is intentionality? They use a lot of terms. So they had this great German philosopher, for example, Edmund Husserl, and then there are other people, several other people, and later on, and it's very critical And so lot of research, lot of work is still going on in that field. For example, on spirituality, on religion, the phenomenologists have their own research. I am just mentioning their names, saying that there is kind of an echo of the kind of discussion we're having when you are using this word Chidabhasa. That is the brief purpose of mentioning it. Now, there are a couple of other things on this verse, um, in the verse number 11 that we did, where why we need to identify the jiva with three things: Chaitanya, Sukshma Sarira, and Chidabhasa. Can you see the game plan? Like, anticipates the ball. Like a lot of people say, Tendulkar could know whether it's going to be a short pitch delivery or outswinger, in swinger. He reads the how the ball is held in the hands, isn't it? And what he's going to do. We can do a similar thing here. Look at this verse: Chaitanya, Sukshma Sarira, and Chidabhasa. Can you tell me what is dominant here? Chaitanya is kind of appearing in terms of at least the amount of word power using. It's like one third, which means what it is kind of submerged in the game of the Sukshma Sharira and Chidabhasha. Chaitanya's presence is visible to us as Chidabhasha. That Shuddha Chaitanya, Pratyak Chaitanya, becomes Aham Idam. It's me and this is mine. That starts the game of limitations and restrictions in the way we approach the reality. We are doing Dvaita Viveka Prakarana. So you can almost anticipate what is he having in his mind when he's mentioning this. And so it's very critical. And then when our jivatva is defined, the next question you will ask, how that jivatva was created. That is also a fundamental question. Therefore, let's go then to the verse number 12 and have a look at it. No, evam anupravesha uktya jivasya ishvara rupatve. Now, Ishvara enters into all of us. It's Suddha Chaitanya. And you are also defining the jiva as Chaitanya plus Sukshma Sarira, Linga Deha plus Linga Dehastha Chitsaya. Yeah? Ishvara enters into all of us. Therefore, the Purva Pakshya is now having a doubt. Student, intelligent guy, so he has some challenges. What is it? If actually Jiva Ishvara Rupatve, Jivasya, yeah, we all become the Ishvara. Ishvara has entered into all of us. Ishvara Agya Vrittitva Dukkhitwadi Katham Upapadyate. What is Ishvara Agya Vrittitva? Ishvara is one, is almighty, right? Is almighty, all powerful, who is omniscient, omnipresent. So he's the Ishvara Agya Vrittitva. Whatever he orders, we follow. We are subjected to the rules and the regulatory principles, the whole cobweb of the sansara. We are victims, which is created by Ishvara. So we are essentially held captive to all his signals. It's like a powerful dictator. You know that funny story I read? It's a little distraction, permit me. Some president of North Korea apparently shot a very senior because he dozed off when he was speaking. He ordered him killed. He said, how can he fall asleep when I'm speaking? I'm the boss. Think about Ishvara. If a particular head of a state can think like this, what Ishvara can do to us? So, Ishvara Agya Vrittitva. All the time we are trying to live according to his wishes. Sometimes we do wrong things without knowing. And like that president killed one of his top officers because he fell asleep when he was giving a speech. If you, of course, fall asleep and God is telling something to you, is going to be hugging you, Give a kiss? No. You should know what he does. He does that. Therefore, he's saying, Ishwara Agya Vrititva Dukhitva, and of course, you are not very happy. All the time enslaved to the wishes, whims, and fancies of a very powerful boss at the top. Kathamupapadyate, how is that possible? How do you explain it to me? Ityasankyaha Maheshwariti. So obviously, why should the jiva be a victim or be subjugated to the wishes of God at the top? And then why should you advise you do bhakti yoga and have saranagati and all that? Complete surrender. And Jesus similarly says, you walk a few steps, I walk twice as many steps. Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan also saying this, Patram Puspam Phalam Tuyam, but give, stay connected. Why? I'm also God, no? So, problem. Therefore, that's being answered philosophically, theologically in the verse number 12. Maheshwari tu mayaya tasya nirmana saktivat vidyate moha saktischa tam jivam mohyataisha mohoyatyasau. Maheshwari tu maya. Mayam tu prakritim vidyat, Mayinam tu Maheshwar. We did it already in the previous chapter. So this Maheshwari Maya, that Maya is power, the potential instrument in the hands of God, Ishvara. Mayayaha nirvana. So Maya creates this whole sansara, the magic power of Ishvara. But that's not the only work of Maya. It has another activity, another function. What is that? Tasya moha saktisya vidyate. It not only is sansara, that is Jiva Srishti part. We also have to make sense of what is called Jiva Srishti. Ishvara Srishti is fine. Not Badhaka, it is Sadhaka, it is helpful. But Jiva Srishti is Badhaka, that we have already discussed. Like there is a playground to build your body, and in the school, some guys go there and then use it for a place to indulge in mischief. That is Jiva Srishti. And that is Badhaka. Moha Saktisya Vidyate. So it's the power to delude whom? Tam Jivam. With that Mohana Shakti, power to delude, Sa Maya Tam Jivam Mohayati. Asau Moha Shakti. That Moha Shakti of that Maya, the deluding force that it has, it exercises and exerts it on the Jivas. What happens? He deludes, that Moha Shakti deludes them. And what is the nature of the delusion? We will look at it in the next verse. Let's look at the explanation which is given in the Kalyana Kusha Vakya. Maheshwari, Maheshwara Sambandhini Triganatmika Upeta Ya Maya. Things already given. Number one, Maheshwari. What does that mean? Maheshwara Sambandhini. It's not Swatantra Maya Shakti. It is Maheshwara Sambandhini. It is the potency of Ishwara. And then, is it same for all of us? Yeah, we are deluded. Then we should all see a snake. Maybe we should see a cobra in the road. Somebody sees a viper, somebody sees a rattlesnake, somebody says something else. When there are five boys, they aren't being able to see the rope, but the five of them do not see the cobra. Different things. And how do you explain it? Therefore, to have a more expanded understanding of Maya Shakti, we are making it Trigunatmika. Means Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas together. So everybody is not Rajasic, everybody is not Tamasic. Then there'll be multiple permutation and combination of how these three aspects of that is operating in us, blinding all of us. But what is the impact of that act of blinding or deluding? it appears in different ways. Therefore, is a powerful adjective given there, trigunatmika. And then what? Chichaya upeta ya maya. Chichaya, the Chidabhasa, which is there, and that Trigunatmika Maya Shakti goes, and then there is agency, Kartritva, Bhaktritva, everything is created there. Ya Maya Vidyate, Tasyaha Nirmana Shakti Vad. And then it has the ability creative power, and then Anandamayad Aravya. So you have that Anandamaya Kosha, Anandamayad Aravya, Samasta Jagataha. Yeah. समस्त जगतः निर्माण समर्थन शक्तिरिव शक्तिस्त. So starting with, say for example, this with this Maya Shakti, starting with Hiranyagarbha, the Panchabhuta, sun mantras, all kinds of plant kingdoms, animal kingdoms, everything it created. Then what else it has? The way it has the Nirmana Shakti, it also has Moha Shaktisya. Chidananda Swarupa Vishayika Jnana Shaktisya Vidyate. मोह शक्तिश्च चिदानंद स्वरूप विषय का ज्ञान शक्तिश्च. That you see, moha shakti, remember, when we have swarupa jnana we get liberated, and we have a faulty way of understanding who we are drowned in the ocean of the sansara. The chidananda swarupa vishayaka, end of the day, that Maya Shakti is emanating, starting with that Supreme Divine. Chidananda Swarupa Visheka Jnana Shaktisya Vidyate. So that Mohana Shakti. The commentators differentiate the functions of Maya into twofold activities. One is Vikshepa Shakti, one is Avarana Shakti. The Vikshepa Shakti creates this samsara. Why? Because actually there is no samsara. This is just a projection. Then there is Avarana Shakti, as a result of which we are not being able to see that the samsara has a substratum, the foundation, which is verily Brahman. Or in our Swarupa, we are only Shivoham, Shivoham. That Avarana Shakti blinds our eyes. Then Viksheva Shakti shows X as Y. What is Anitya appears as Nitya. And this we have this whole samsara. Avarana Vikshepa both. असौ मोह शक्ति जीव मोहयति स्वस्वरूप ज्ञानम विरहितम करोति. So we have swarupa jnana, will get liberated, but we don't have swarupa jnana. As a result of what? Because of that mohana shakti, it clouds us. Asau moha shakti jnanena vritam jnanam tena muhyanti jantavah. Ajnanena vritam. Our knowledge and wisdom is actually wrapped in ignorance. It's wrapped in ignorance. So if you are a very smart mathematician, but at an axiomatic, lot of great mathematics professors you would be remembering in our school days also. If there is a minor error in the equation, you are deriving something, you have made a minor error. What happens? It takes you somewhere else. You are doing a smart derivation, but instead of coming to the conclusion which is valid, you reach somewhere else. That's what happens with all of us, because we are making that error in judgment as to who we are. Again, ajnanena vritam jnanam tena muhyanti jante vehe. Now, one particular, in the Ramakrishna Tika, there is one verse from the Nrsimha Uttaratapini Upanishad which is quoted. I was trying to locate where exactly it is. I couldn't find it. Tat edat jadam mohatmakam anantam tucham rupam asyaha. This is also quoted by Bhagavan Bhashyakara. Avidyayaha jivanamuktasya vidyate natra sansayah. So what he's trying to say is tad etat jadam, that Maya Shakti, that Mohana, mohatmakam anantam tucham rupam asyaha. Asyaha mayayaha rupam tuchhameva. Fundamentally not real. In Maya we say sad asad vilakshanam, anirvachaniya, that we say. But here what is saying, tucham, that word is saying fundamentally invalid. Like there is a certain anxiety we have. You think you had a certain business meeting, it's actually in the next month. By mistake, you've entered it in your diary, and it is this month. You have 3 days to go, and you had met that this will be our discussion point of discussion in the next meeting. You haven't achieved it. How nice is your sleep? You can't sleep. You are really disturbed. You are shouting at everybody around at home, and you're shouting at your juniors in the office. What happened? Why isn't the that presentation ready? And what are we going to talk about? And then a nice, meek, young worker in your team, she says, "Sir, I think are you mistaking? Which meeting are you talking about?" Now, this particular meeting, you don't know what I'm talking about? Yes, sir, but that's next month. I'm not saying we don't have to do. We have already done these parts, but it's next month. It's not next Monday. It's not exactly after 48 hours. You relaxed. Till you know, you have real anxiety problem. Therefore, saying tucham rupasyaha, and then avidyayaha jivanamuktasya vidyate natra sangsayah. Now, this particular avidya and its power, the mohatmika thing, once is liberated, he knows his swarupa. Does Maya, Avidya, the anxiety, once you know actually the meeting is the next month, not next week, first day, then are you any more troubled and perturbed about what you thought was real? Similarly, the Jivana Mukta, the person who has transcended the limitation associated with a faulty understanding as a result of ignorance, is no more troubled by the game of ignorance. Yeah. Now, that is what he's saying. We'll go to the next verse, but before that, what happens and how this particular, there are the double-edged sword, this Maya Shakti. This is very important. This Maya Shakti is a very interesting thing. The first thing is that as a result of this whole jivatva, which is attributed to us, before go further, there is one philosophical question. This Maya, we will go into discussing this in this verse itself. Where does it live? Is it in Jiva or is it in Ishvara? You have Ashraya and Vishaya. What is the Ashraya? What is the locus of Maya? Now, if you attribute it to Brahman, then there is Dvaitapati, right? There is duality. Your Advaita viewpoint gets internally incoherent or contradictory in nature. Then you say, no, it must be in Jiva. Because if you have Avidya, you will get liberated. So it must be in Jiva. There is another philosophical problem, and that is discussed in advanced Vedantic texts. Now, if human beings, individuals, is the ashraya of avidya, that means the locus. But how the jiva come into being? The Srishti is a work of God, and God uses his Maya Shakti to create us. Maya and avidya is more or less, when it is at the level of Ishvara, we call it Maya. At the level of jiva, we call it avidya because of the dominance of raga and dvesha, and there that is Suddha Sattva. Yeah. But here, how can the cause, you know, be there in the effect for his sustenance? These are philosophical questions. At a deeper level of Vedantic contemplation, this question doesn't exist. Yeah. This does a question will not arise. Uh, I am daring to have, one understanding of it. Look at the quantum physics thing they're talking about. First, you have a certain field in the primary level where there is a bit of excitement, and then you have subatomic particles coming into being, which are essentially some vibrations. And then at a later date, you're talking about atoms and you're talking about all kinds of things. They have vibrations. Then you're talking about vibration for vibration to exist. Is there something on what? Vibration on what? What is the medium for this vibration? All these philosophical questions, physics questions will emerge. I'm just thinking like that. And this is not a valid explanation I'm giving. I'm just thinking. There is this, what is called Atmashraya or Anunyashraya dosha in the Indian logic thing, that X leads to B and X happens because of B and B happens because of A. A, B will become mutually dependent, so you don't have any particular answer as such. But if you look at it from a Vedantic contemplation point of view, this is not a problem essentially, because when we are operating with a human mind and we are trying to make sense of the ontological foundation of Vidya, and then we ask questions about what is this locus, it functions, who are we discussing and who is discussing? It's us who are in bondage, who are not liberated, who have an intermediate level of subjectivity, which is conditioned and trapped by this duality. And with this pair of lens we have called duality, we are trying to make sense of something which far exceeds beyond the scope of what we can make sense of. Because already Bhagavan Bhashyakara says that Maya is anirvachaniya. So he tells you that Bhagavan also says, Mama Maya Duratya. You focus on me and do what I'm saying, but don't try to understand how I create this whole thing, how my magic works. That's beyond you. So this is not to discourage that we cannot think about Maya, we cannot raise this question, but the real question here is that we need to go deeper to make sense of it in the right sense. Now, when we are deluded, what happens to the jiva? What is the follow? What is the outcome? Mohad anishatam prapya magno शोचति ईशश्रेष्ठमिदं द्वैतं sarvamuktam samasatah. Now he's saying, look, I'm concluding it. Mohad anisatam prapya. The jiva is Chaitanya plus Sukshma Sharira plus Chidabhasa. But Chaitanya is there, he forgets. Chidabhasa he thinks is real. Sukshma Sharira he doesn't even properly understand. But then, at the level of this egoistic subjectivity that he develops, with the help of Chidabhasa, he is not able to see the foundation of all that is visible to him, which is Chaitanya. And then he describes with a faulty understanding. What does it mean? The setting of all his understanding is that principle of ignorance. There is a fundamental error which is there in the operating system, because of which all that he analyzes and contemplates are all erroneous. Mohad anisatam prapya. What was the question? If Ishvara is in all of us, why are we having Ishvara Ajnavritti? Number two, Dukhitvadi. Dukha, Sukha, all kinds of Kartatva, Bhoktitva associated feelings and experiences. That was the main question. He's saying no. His Isata is not denied, it exists. But he is not being able to recognize it anymore. Mohad anisatam praptam.